Hi YouTube, it's Catherine Michelle, and I know it's been a while, but things have been kind of crazy here. Anyway, today we're going to go over Komel Crowley's autopsy report, and right now it just seems like after going over every, David's and I don't know how to pronounce the little girl's name, Raniya, Rani. I don't want to butcher her name, but I have yet to hear how her name is pronounced. So anyway, the little girl's autopsy reports, they're all pretty much the same. What I will note is Komel did have 2 identified gunshot wounds. The entrances are left posterior parietal region, and it's left to right, front to back. So about like this. So it'd be like this direction. Animal scavenging and decomposition with marked disruption of the head, neck, and upper extremities. That was their final conclusion. Now, we're going to go over the actual report itself. On the preliminary examination, it says most of the head and the hands are missing. She reveals decompositional changes. There is extensive bloating, skin slippage, and discoloration of the body surfaces. And we'll talk about the type of skin slippage that they see here. It's not the type that is, where the actual skin itself starts coming off the bones. That's in later decomposition. By the time that type of slippage happens, organs are already liquefied and broken down. And as you will see, she has all of her organs intact. They say that wavy dark hair is recovered from the right sock and is placed in an evidence envelope. Oh, I forgot to preface this again. I'm so sorry. This will be very descriptive reading of an autopsy report. So if you are under the age of 18 or squeamish, turn it off. Don't watch. There are large fragments that appear consistent with the skull. Many of the fragments reveal linear appearance consistent with fragmented digits, fingers. Okay, the bag contains multiple commingled bony fragments, including a portion of dark wavy hair and white cotton debris. Amongst this bony material are 2 mandibles, which I found interesting. So obviously both mandibles are not hers. And then it goes on to talk about the clothing, which we're not going to go over. That's not important what she was wearing. What I will note about what they noted, what I will read about what they noted about her clothing is the pant leg. And it says the medial right pant leg is extensively frayed. These are soaked with decompositional fluid and apparent blood staining. So as on the picture, when you only see the lower half of her, but you see her legs are spread, and the right leg on the back in the medial inner side. So the inner portion of the leg, outer would be lateral, inner medial. So that you see a big tear in her pant leg there. And they did happen to mention that. Okay, now we're going to go to the external examination. The available body appears well nourished. Lividity and rigor are not discerned. Again, there we have this thing with the lividity not being discerned. We know why rigor wasn't. They were laying there for too long. Rigor had then already settled and gone away. The head consists of a portion of a skull which includes most of the left occipital bone and portions of the adjacent left parietal bone. Okay, the occipital, this bone back here at the back of your head. And the parietal, again, this bone. So it has like this big section right here. You have the parietal and the occipital. That's what they found left. There is focal brown to red staining of the inner surface. The scalp is absent. This is further described below. The neck is stable. Most of the anterior soft tissue is absent. The hyoid bone and laryngeal cartilages are not present. Now what I found interesting about this, okay, anterior, posterior, front and back. Now she is found lying face down. And that is written by several officers, and only one officer describes her being found slightly turned, but I think by that point the only thing I can assume is that they had lifted part of her body to see underneath, because the first few officers in there describe her totally prone. She's face down. Now, if she's face down and her head is down, and all of this damage was supposedly done by the dog after her death, and if she dies in this prone position, how does the dog get to her neck? How does he get to the larynx? How does he eat her face? Okay, start to think about these things, because how these are written and how it's coming out are not making sense. The chest is stable. Extending downward from the neck region onto the central chest is an area of discrete dark brown discoloration. The abdomen is protuberant. Now, if you notice that on David's, they said his abdomen was flat, but we have a photo that clearly shows he has a distended abdomen. And Raniya, I hope I'm saying her name right. If I'm not, please forgive me, family. But she didn't seem to be as distended as the both of these. Now, hers is used, it's not even called distended, it's called protuberant. So that tells you she's bloated pretty good. And she has no injury to the genital area. Okay, now the upper extremities are stable. The distal aspects terminate with the absence of the hands. Again, if you remember, proximal, distal. So everything's great. There's nothing wrong with her arms, with her shoulders. Everything works great. She's just missing her hands. The skin, soft tissue, and bony margins are irregular. The lower extremities are symmetric and stable, so everything's okay. The feet are complete, so that means that they're still attached. They're there. Nothing has been done to her feet. The posterior body surfaces are intact and described elsewhere. So again, you have the front of her body, the anterior section of her head and her face, which is missing, supposedly eaten by a dog, supposedly eaten by paleo. Now, I'm not saying a dog wasn't brought in. I still am beginning to wonder, with everything I'm reading, was another dog brought into this and then given free rein on the faces and heads? Because there's no way that paleo could get in there. If she's lying face down, at least this portion of her face would still be there. If she's laying this way or if she's laying this way, we don't know. They're not really showing exactly how she's laying. But especially if she was laying this way, her entire face would still be there. If she's laying this way, this whole part of her face would still be there. It's gone. So was another animal brought in to do some eating? Good question. And I find it interesting that both David's and Komel's larynx is missing. Their hyoid bones are gone. How do you tell if someone has been strangled? You check the hyoid bone to see if it's been fractured. It's gone. So we don't know. We don't know if they were strangled. Their eyes are missing, so you can't see if there's petechiae. Again, not enough information to come to determine that David killed these people. If anything, it is showing you, just by reading these reports, too much was missing. Yeah. So, we'll continue. Okay, entrance wound, gunshot wound to the head, lateral. Entrance wound. This is located at the edge of the remaining left parietal bone of the skull, 6 inches from the top of the shoulder and 1.5 inches left of the posterior midline. It consists of a 1.5 by 1 centimeter rounded inwardly beveled defect. Soot, powder, and stippling are not seen. Now in this one it's not seen, so I'm not even sure if did they do a test to even find gunshot residue? Highly doubtful. And linear fractures are associated from this, which is to be expected. The exit wound, indeterminate. Pathway, this extends into the skull and brain. Trajectory, left to right, front to back. No projectile were found. Now, gunshot wound, medial. I just noticed that. Lateral, being on the outside, medial, being toward the midline. This is also located at the edge of the remaining left parietal bone of the skull, 1.5 inches from the top of the shoulder, and 1 inch left of the posterior midline. It consists of a rounded, inwardly beveled defect. Soot, powder, and stippling are not seen. 1.5 inches from the shoulder? You don't even get to the head. You're still in the spinal region. Oh, wow. Okay. I think enough said on that one. Trajectory, left to right, front to back. How is that possible when it says this one is located in the remaining left parietal bone? The parietal is up here. The occipital is here. You have the cerebral column here. Shoulders are here. I'm sorry, but these are almost like reading a comedy, and it's not even funny because these people actually died, and it actually makes me very angry. 1.5 inches from the top of the shoulder and 1 inch left of the posterior midline. I'm sorry, but that is the cervical column. That is not the head. Left to right, front to back. If I was a person that swears, trust me, there would be all kinds of colorful metaphors everywhere on this video. Internal examination. The body cavities contain small amounts of decompositional fluid. The organs are in the usual locations. Features of canine scavenging is described below. Head and central nervous system. The remaining portions of the head consist of the posterior skull. This includes the portions of the occipital bone and left parietal bone. There's no brain tissue. The bony and soft tissues margins are irregular, consistent with canine scavenging. Neck. The anterior musculature, hyoid bone, and laryngeal cartilages are absent due to apparent animal scavenging. All that remains is the exposed and intact cervical vertebral column. Again, I ask you, how does a dog get to the front of the neck if she's lying on her face? Cardiovascular system. The heart is generally intact. I find that interesting. The right dominant coronary arteries are intact and free of stenosis. The myocardium has a uniform appearance. The chambers are dilated. The valves appear intact. The aorta is lined by intact linings. The arch vessels are unremarkable. So the heart is okay. And what they mean by the heart is generally intact is a good question. I have no idea what they mean by that. Respiratory system. The right and left lungs are good. The lung fields are free of consolidation. The tracheobronchial tree and pulmonary arteries are unobstructed. Again, these are relatively small portions of the lungs, and they're unobstructed. They can see them, they can feel them, they can touch them, they can cut them. Hepatobiliary system. The liver has an intact capsule. The parenchyma is soft and has a green discoloration. The gallbladder contains trace amounts of bile. The biliary tree appears intact. Again, small features are seen. The capsule the liver is in is intact. They are not decomposed. Endocrine system. The adrenal glands and pancreas are unremarkable beyond decomposition. So these show some decomp, whereas the others didn't really show any, if you remember correctly, on David's and the little girls. Did not have that wording. The gastrointestinal system. The esophagus is lined by a smooth otolized mucosa. The stomach contains approximately 10 grams of light tan uniform soft material. The remaining bowel is unremarkable to random inspection. The appendix is present. Now, if you remember in the little girl's stomach, she also had a light tan fluid in her stomach as well as undigested food particles. So That tells me that mother was killed before daughter, because she still and died relatively soon after she had eaten something, whatever this tan liquid was. Now the genital urinary system, the right and left kidneys are great. They're fine. The smooth cortices have uniform thickness, and the corticomedullary junctions are well demarcated. The medullae and collecting systems are intact. The bladder is empty. The uterus is free of products of conception. The proximal vaginal vault is unremarkable. In the musculoskeletal system, muscles are appropriate for bulk and the decedent's age. The margins of the distal upper extremities are described above. Injuries described above. The available skeleton appears well developed. Now, representative tissue biopsies are submitted in cassettes, and additional biopsies are retained in formalin, and the dissected organs are returned to the body. Same thing in every single one of them. I don't have anything else to add, except for that she appears to be a little further along in decomposition, not by much, could be hours, could be maybe half a day to, I don't think it was a whole day. It could be, but not likely. But she was obviously killed first because her decomp is a little further along. I wonder why they have two mandibles. Why didn't they find out where the other one went? And this is the thing that bothers me about all that. They find these bone fragments, and there's just a lack of lab work done, a lack of testing done. They gather stuff up and say, okay, this was by this person, send it to them. We don't know who it goes to, but oh well, put it with the body. It was there. Again, I can't even, I will not, I won't go into saying what I think, but the colorful metaphors are just flowing through my head right now. Again, my biggest thing with her autopsy, and this is going to be a short one because it's all the same thing. You come to the same conclusions. She has 2 gunshot wounds to the head. They try to describe one in the back of the head, which then turns around to be on the side of the head, left to right, front to back, but somehow it's going to be in the cervical section of the spine, but yet they say it's in the back of the head at the midline, 1 inch away from the posterior midline. Who wrote this? Oh, I have to see who did this. Mitchell Morey. This must have been what Dr. Kennedy was telling me when he said he thinks that Mitchell was in the learning phases. He's kind of going to school. So maybe I need to give this guy a break because he was trying. I'm assuming he was doing the best he could, but it was signed off by a Lauren W. Jackson, MD, reviewing pathologist. And Mitchell Morey was the assistant medical examiner, which means... let's see, what's her name? I know it's Lelinski. Let me get her first name. Jessica Lelinski is the deputy medical examiner. And so it looks like Mitchell kind of did this one on his own, did Komel on his own, but the report was signed off by the reviewing pathologist, so I'm not even sure if the pathologist even truly read this. Did he just sign his name? Because that is what it appears to me. Again, that is my take on it. That's my suspected view, because reading this doesn't make sense. So we'll close it up with doing a review. 2 gunshot wounds to the head. She has 2 mandibles. Just a minute. I'll be right back. Okay, I forgot to add in this one little part, so I'm going to toss it toward the beginning to let you know the difference. There's talking about the slippage. There's skin slippage where it actually starts coming off the bones, where the skin is actually falling off, where you could glove somebody, meaning you could actually pull skin and hands off. And then there's the other type of slippage where the skin starts to separate itself from the separate layers. As you know, you have several layers of skin. That is the type of slippage that is seen in these autopsies, where the skin layers are separating themselves, not where it's coming off of the bones. So there will be slippage, but not the advanced type where skin is then coming off the bones. Hope that helps. Bye. Okay, and we're back. So to summarize, again, 2 gunshot wounds to her head, both on the left side. They're assuming exiting on the right. They have a bag of commingled body fragments. From what I can read in any of these reports, they did not try to figure out whose body parts and whose fragments belonged to whom. Belonged to whom. That's my frustration and anger coming out, because I'm pretty hacked at this. They should have, at the very least, called in a forensic anthropologist to put this together, but they didn't. It looks to me like they have enough fragments of bone left that they probably could have gotten a pretty good idea of the trajectories, but they didn't even bother. My question to you, police officers and everybody else involved, why? What are you hiding? Because I refuse. I refuse to believe you were that inept. I refuse to believe that, for a lack of a better word, you are stupid. You are officers. You were medical examiners. You are people who've been doing your job for a long time. So it leaves me with one question and one question only. What are you trying to hide? Who are you trying to cover up for? Because I'm telling you, this just makes no sense. Okay, go back. Full review right now. 2 gunshot wounds to the head. The medical examiner can't seem to determine if it's going to be in the cervical spine, or is it actually going to be in the occipital, or is it going to be in the parietal? It's written 3 different ways in this autopsy report. She's missing everything in the front. She's lying on her stomach, but yet she's missing the front of her head. They didn't even ask why. Lividity is absent. In her it's not discerned, and a couple of the others, David's, it was absent. Here it's not discerned, which means they can't see it. They didn't even bother to ask why, or how did the blood go away? Where did the blood go? They don't care. Her abdomen is very distended, just like David's was distended, but which in the photo you can see it's distended, but in the autopsy report it calls it flat. Her upper extremities are stable and good, except for she's missing her hands. Now, the more I think about this, I don't think the dog could have gotten to it. How did they put this? I forget how they had. I'll get that in my next one, where the police actually describe how they found her hands. But either way, I believe she's laying on it like this, or like this. It's covered. There's no way a dog could take that hand off. Not from the position that they were in. Now here's something else you need to think about. The posterior body surfaces are intact. Now, the paleo supposedly ate the front that's lying on the floor, but didn't eat anything on the back or the exposed. She had a large portion of her right posterior thigh showing. There's no dog scavenging on that skin, which would be a whole lot easier to get to than that. And again, the little girl's abdomen completely exposed, not eaten. Her face exposed, not eaten. Why just David and Komel? So, with that, I will leave it as that. All of her organs are intact. They were all able to be sliced and to be dissected and to take tissue samples. You can't take tissue samples from liquefied remains. These are actual tissue samples that were put in formalin. You don't put decomp fluid in formalin. So just goes to show that, again, same with her as with David and the little girl. They have not and had not been dead for very long. Again, the stages of her decomp are a little further along, so I will stick with what I've been saying all along. I believe she was killed first, and then either David and then the little one. And I just pray to God the little one didn't see this. And my next video is actually going to go over the investigation. And also, it's going to be time to start giving my my suspects. I'm not going to go around and say they did it, because that's defamation of character and that would be slander. I can't do that. It's not my place. However, I can say who I believe is a strong person of interest, and you're not going to like it, but ask me if I care, because you know what? I don't. Not one bit. I'm tired of your vulgarity. I'm tired of you thinking you can bully people online. Yeah, you get behind a keyboard and you're one real big mamma jamma, aren't you? Say it to my face. Come out here and do it to my face. I'm tired of all of you guys. Seriously. But we will start, and I will list why. By the reports, by the police reports, by your emails, by reports of others, what you've done online, what you're doing now with the Gray State movie. You disgust me, all of you, thinking you can do that movie and take over. You don't own that. That was David's work. But somehow he was managed to be silenced. You see behind me? You think this is a joke? You think we don't know what we're doing? You think we're just a bunch of, ragtag idiots? I forget what you called me, but trust me, I'll quote that in the next video. Not this. Right here, folks. Small section of what I'm doing. It lists everybody. I'm going over everything. Doing it the old-fashioned way. Means, motive, opportunity, and a lot of you have stuck your foot in it. So, yeah, I'm upset. I'm pretty angry right now. But we'll stick with Komel's autopsy and hers being, again, they're all pretty much the same. Okay, I have to stop because I'm going on toward a whole other subject. And for those of you who have issues with me, that's fine. Have issues. You know what? It's not about your opinion, and it's not about my opinion, and I don't care. Take that, instead of being frustrated with me, and if your so-called friend, if you truly are a friend of this guy, instead of fighting those of us who were proving that David didn't do this, by their own words, by these reports, by these, everything, the police reports, the pictures, everything. Do you see that? Every flag is something that is wrong. And that again, that's only half of this. Instead of telling us we're crazy and that we're stupid, and I won't call what else these wonderful things you tend to call us, why aren't you helping? If you're not helping, you're hindering. And if you're hindering, why? What are you hiding? Don't worry, we're finding it. And in some cases, we already have found it. So there. Yeah, I'm upset. So to the rest of you, I'm really sorry. But just sometimes, I read over these autopsies, and especially reviewing them this morning and rereading them and going over and over and over everything and comparing them, and I cannot understand how either side of those families are not livid with anger over the injustice, the lies, the misdirections, and how even as so-called friends of just conveniently how you don't mind going online and going into movies and going on to, well, I don't know about movies, but I guess the so-called Gray State documentary, joke and a half. Not one of you, oh, maybe there was one. That's not true. There was one. And I will read what they had to say in the next video. But most of you are not only going along with the so-called final decision, but you are spewing it left and right when you know it's not true. It's a flat-out lie. So, again, my question to you is why? with friends like you. Who needs enemies?